Hello and welcome to the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. My name is Craig Telfer, and on this occasion I am joined by my close associate Shaughan McGuigan.
Hello there.
And you know what happens when the Michelle Bass and Stuart Wilson of the Terrace get together. My God, you've got that right. We're going to have sex under a table, and then we're going to talk about some lower league Scottish football.
Was that Big Brother 2?
Big Brother 5!
Big Brother 5, is that?
Big Brother 5,
out.
yes. That was, remember they were both involved in Fight Night.
Was that with Victor and...
Yes. I'm sure I've described this in the past as the Victor and Jason of the Terrace, but no, I thought let's be the Michelle and Stuart.
The Jungle Cats?
They were the Jungle Cats, yes.
They were the Jungle Cats.
But Michelle and Stuart...
Nadia won it.
Nadia won it that year. You wouldn't get away with that culturally in this day and age. There really has been a horrible shift where that sort of stuff does become like a trans person winning Big Brother. It would just be unthinkable now, which is weird. We really seem to have gone backwards culturally.
I was a big fan of Big Brother, maybe until about, I don't know, Series 7 or 8 at that point. I started to drift away, but it was class.
I remember Fight Night from Big Brother 5. Fight Night was extraordinary television.
Yeah.
I remember what had happened was that Michelle and another contestant called Emma, they had been evicted, but instead they got put in a secondary house where they got to see everything that was going on, everything that had been said about them. And then, during a very boozy party, were put back into the house, and Sparks did well and truly fly. I'm sure somebody got hit with a salver.
I mean, it was incredible TV. I mean, I think if it wasn't that series, it was certainly at some point there was an indication that maybe they shouldn't allow as much alcohol into the television show. I'll be honest, maybe there was an argument they should have allowed more, considering how good that television show was.
I don't know, Shaughan. There gets to a stage where watching conflict in television just doesn't become interesting anymore. I remember when I was younger, I used to quite like watching the Jeremy Kyle show, but the older I got, just thinking this is actually horrible television. It felt very exploitative and it very, very punching down, and I just didn't like it. And I think subsequently, having seen clips on YouTube in my more idle moments, going back and looking at it, it's just horrible TV. And I'd much rather not have that in my life. I'd much rather watch Baddiel Syndrome or Ouija's, for instance.
And I mean that's true, but I suppose Jeremy Kyle, I don't think they're drunk.
No.
I suppose I sometimes feel that Love Island, which I regularly watch, sometimes falls a bit flat.
Right.
But I think they're allowed like one drink, for example, which is fair enough. But I totally appreciate where you're coming from. You can't just give people like unlimited drink and then film it.
Right.
Now that I think about it.
Yes, you can. Oliver Reading After Dark. There you go.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I mean, you've ultimately come round to my way of thinking.
Yeah, he's the exception that proves the rule. No, he's not. That was just very funny television. Just getting a very sozzled actor to. I've actually watched that. And any time it cut, they're actually having a fairly intellectual, quite a fairly heavyweight discussion, and I'll cut to him just interjecting with an absolute load of nonsense.
Was that not ultimately though? Was that not even worse than anything Big Brother have done? Because it felt like without. I think I've watched that once, but it felt like there was some like intellectual heavyweights, and then they just inserted this very drunk man.
Yeah, I'm sure it finished with him trying to kiss a feminist academic. I think he said, "Give us a kiss, big tits," when he tried to grab her. So, I mean, we're laughing at that.
That's unacceptable.
That's not acceptable. That's not acceptable.
That's a reason. You know, I'm now very much coming round to your way of thinking that we should not have television shows that just ply people full of drink. It's unacceptable.
I think, Shaughan, what you're looking for are programmes like the Great British Sewing Bee. That is very much in your lane. Antiques Roadshow. Those are the sort of shows you're looking for. Repair Shop.
I like the Bake Off because there's an element of danger. The Sewing Bee less so.
Well, you could prick your finger. Just saying that's dangerous. That's dangerous. You could draw blood. You could hurt yourself.
But you can do that on the Bake Off as well. They have sharp cooking utensils.
Yeah, you're not going to sew yourself together though, like sew your arm against your sweater. You couldn't do that in the Great British Bake Off. You could theoretically do it in the Great British Sewing Bee.
You would have to be the worst sewer ever to do that. I can't imagine you would get on the Great British. Like, bear in mind it must be like the best 12 swords in Britain to go on that show. I can't imagine that's something you would do.
Do you remember when the X Factor started? It was primarily a talent competition where you had to be very good at singing to get on it. And then guys like Wagner got quite far in the competition. The equivalent would Wagner be the person that would sew their own arm to their body. But that's, Shaughan, that's neither here nor there. We're spending the past 5 minutes talking about reality television and Oliver Reed's appearance in After Dark, but we have got bigger matters at hand. Because we are well and truly in playoff country here. We've got 5 gigantic matches to discuss. We've got the Premiership playoff quarter final and the 4 semi-finals from the Championship and League One. And I suppose we'll start at the very top. This was the Premiership playoff quarter final between Airdrieonians and Partick Thistle, and it finished 2-2. Very entertaining game of football here. Nikolai Todorov got an early goal for the Diamonds, but it was cancelled out by a stunning strike from Luke Macbeth, his first ever senior goal. Scott Robinson put Thistle in front just before the interval, but Gabby McGill pulled the Diamonds back level shortly after the restart with a very good finish from Mason Hancock's slow cross. Looked like a class game. I only saw the highlights of this, Shaughan, but every time, I mean, there was about, on the Airdrie's highlights channel, about 12 minutes worth of highlights, but every single thing in this game just looked like a pinball, like you were playing like pinball.
That's why I look like pinball, I suppose. I done the thing that I always do when it comes to the playoffs, and I essentially get greedy. So see if there is a game like maybe live on BBC Scotland or live on Alba, but there is also an opportunity to stream a game on the same night. I end up doing that because in my head, I'm like, I could watch 2 games of football at the exact same time. But actually, it always sounds better in theory than it works out in practice, because ultimately what I'd done on Tuesday night was miss big chunks of Airdrie versus Partick Thistle and big chunks of Montrose versus Inverness. So I was kind of flitting between the two, and ultimately watched the highlights back of Airdrie Partick Thistle. Very much didn't watch the highlights back of Montrose Inverness, but we'll come to that game.
We'll come on to that.
In terms of this, I thought it was an excellent game. That's the first thing. In terms of the two teams, I thought Airdrie looked like the kind of better side over the piece, certainly over the first 90 minutes. Over the first 25 minutes, or maybe 20 minutes, I thought it looked like they were going to run away with it. But as much as they look like the better footballing team, if I was a Partick Thistle fan, I might have been like Partick could have won it. Like Brian Graham had that excellent chance in the second half, and
both felt Ben Stanway as well.
And it was
really
like hit it. But it was like he just kept running and running and running. So yes, it was a blood and thunder game, which as a Wraith Rovers fan, bear in mind Wraith are going to play the winner. I wanted a 100% effort from both teams, and ideally unprecedented levels of violence, because I want injuries and suspensions ideally for the semi-final. Maybe I'll get that in the second leg, but I thought a really, really good contest. That the Airdrie over the piece maybe looked slightly better.
I've got to say the performance, again, and it was only going by the highlights, we spoke about this guy last time we talked about Airdrie, and that was Caballo Megwa.
Yep,
my goodness,
so good.
The guy looks like an absolute superstar. And I really, really hope that he can get a good run with Hibernian next season. We don't need to really go on and talk about Megwa more than we did, but the guy looks like absolutely fantastic, and what a find that he has been for Airdrie. One of the things that I would say about this match, Shaughan, and I don't know about you, but I thought that all 4 goals were preventable in one way or another. The only goal that I thought was actually a really, really good goal was Gabby McGill's goal to make it 2 each. But I thought all the other goals, they were quite... everything could have been done a bit better for them.
I would agree with your initial comment and disagree with McGill goal being preventable.
Oh, right, okay.
Oh, in terms of first goal, so Todorov's header was very good. Telfer's cross into the area was really good. However, it felt like Milne might have done a wee bit better at the back post.
I was thinking about that as well. Maybe I'm saying they could have done better, but I'm thinking for that one, if you're going to get pinned, because that's effectively what happened there, I think that it's like a lion A female line, obviously. The male lines just sit around and watch the darts and drink super tenants. But so a female line identifies the weakest animal in the pack and thinks, I'm having this. And so when Todorov, who's obviously a big aerial presence there, peels off to Harry Milne, who is a very, very good player, but isn't necessarily known for his aerial prowess, that's the sort of thing, if you pin him and you can get the run on him there. And it was a great ball in from Charlie Telfer, but a good finish there. Could Harry Milne have done better? Perhaps, but it's that ball in from Telfer really played on Todorov's strength, of power and heading ability.
Absolutely. And then so the equaliser for Luke Macbeth, brilliant finish from Macbeth.
Oh, see, Shaughan, the angle where it shows from behind Macbeth
so
when
good.
he hits it. I mean, the highlights, I'm going to assume that Airdrie took the highlights from the BBC stream, given the quality of the camera working all the various different angles. There must have been about 4 or 5 different camera angles to choose from. But that one where it shows Macbeth skipping through the middle of the park and the curl that he gets in the shot, well, you don't appreciate how good a goal it is till you see that angle or the ball spinning away, and there's no chance of Hemfrey getting that.
No, and I know we're kind of talking about the goals, but there's very much a discussion to be made about, not that I know too much about him, but it's very much a discussion to be had about Luke Macbeth in terms of his progression from, I think it was Glenafton, to the Scottish Championship. He is ultimately taking in his stride. But you're right, so there was a kind of mistake in terms of Airdrie trying to play through the lines. Might have been Todorov that kind of made it there. I'd have to go back and look at it. But yes, there was an error in terms of giving it away in a dangerous area. But the finish was excellent. In terms of Robinson making it 2-1. Really good ball from Jack McMillan. It looked like, watching it, that there was at least 2 Airdrie defenders, maybe 3, that was screaming at Robbie Hemfrey. I thought he might have been the least to blame. It was hard for him to come for it. Initially, I was like, right, so it's 3, 4, 5 yards out. Why are you not coming for it? But it felt like there was other people who probably should have done something before he would have come for it. I don't know.
I enjoyed watching it back because Scott Robinson's kind of just sneaking his way into the area there, because he almost sort of like goes in, and I think Megwat has got an eye on him. But given that Airdrie are playing a back 3, I think that the 2 guys, it might have been Ballantyne and I think it's Fordyce that are playing well. Brian Graham is in there, and you can understand if someone of Brian Graham's prowess.
They're attracted to him.
You're attracted to him because he is, if you put 2 guys on him, then you've got more chance of snuffing him out. And it was a really good ball in from McMillan. But Robinson just sort of like tiptoes his way in there, and it's just he is able to finish. And I'm not sure, because I watched it, but the highlights back a couple of times. Megwa takes a look at him, and I'm not sure if he could have done more to come out and get him. But all does to seem to happen where I'm going to assume he's taking a look at him, because he's got I think there's somebody over his shoulder as well. I think he's in trying to do 2 things at the same time, whilst also thinking that Ballantyne or Fordyce is going to get this. So, but you can see the reaction when it's in. Like, I think it's Ballantyne is absolutely livid. He sort of turns around and does, like, he makes a really aggressive gesture.
That kind of frustrated me a bit, because I thought he was every bit as much to blame, if not more so, than Hemfrey. Now, in terms of the last goal, great ball in from Mason Hancock. But I thought in terms of the keeper, David Mitchell was, like, whether he should have come to, bear in mind it's a kind of reasonably low cross, across the face of goal. But again, it's a difficult ball for David Mitchell to come out for. But by the time the shot comes in, he's behind the line. It's just it's weird positioning, put it that way.
Yeah, that's fine, because he actually does make a good save, and just unfortunately it's about 2 yards behind the goal line. But I thought that was a really difficult ball into the box.
It was, absolutely was.
In fact, as well, again, having watched this back a couple of times, it's a really good run in from McGill, who I think Muirhead, he's over Muirhead's shoulder. Muirhead's obviously got an eye on and thinks he's got him, but he doesn't. He staggers his run just slightly, sort of dips in and dips out to create the space for himself. And I think he is, and I hate using this term, gambling that if these guys don't get it, I'll be the one that get it. But I think it's put into a dangerous place with so much pace that, and again, use a bit of a cliche, the corridor of uncertainty here. But if anything goes in there, it's very difficult to clear it, because if you don't do it properly, either you're going to stick it in the back of the net, or you're going to leave it for the centre forward to come in and finish.
It is difficult to defend, but if you retreat behind your goal line, it becomes even more difficult to defend, I suppose.
That's it. So we're laying the blame for that goal squarely at the feet of David Mitchell. How do you see this second leg going, Shaughan? Because it feels very finely poised. The second leg's on tomorrow night, Friday night on the BBC Scotland channel. I'll certainly be watching it. I imagine you're going to be the same. I think this has got the potential to be a really entertaining game of football, much like this one. And given what's at stake here between two sides who have been pretty even over the course of the season. They only finished, 3 or 4 points between them? Thistle, obviously the better team out of the two of them, given that they finished higher up the league table, but not a lot between the sides.
So difficult to call. I do think that Thistle will win, but only because, not necessarily because I think there's much between the teams, not necessarily because I think that Partick Thistle are a better team than Airdrie, because every time I watch Airdrie, I'm very, very impressed by them. Sometimes I watch Partick Thistle and I'm impressed by them. However, based on the league table, Partick Thistle have been the better team. But Airdrie do have a reasonably poor away record. And because of that, I do think that Thistle will sneak through. But I think it'll be, I think again, it could be an absolute classic. I think it would be high scoring. Could be something silly like 3-2 or 4-3. But I do just fancy Thistle to get through. However, if Airdrie were to manage it, I wouldn't be at all surprised.
A question, this has just popped into my head. I know that Rhys McCabe gets a lot of pop, and rightly so, given what he's achieved at Airdrie. Even if Airdrie don't go up a fourth place finish in an SPFL Trust Trophy, that's an excellent season in the Championship. But does Chris Doolan get enough credit for what he's done as the Partick Thistle manager? Given, if you remember at the beginning of the season, when they lost up in Ross County, I think the next day the club released a statement saying they were in pretty severe financial difficulties. A number of players moved on, and I think we expected perhaps a difficult season for the Jags. That didn't quite materialise, and they've more or less they finished one place higher than they did last season.
Has he had the credit he deserves? I wouldn't say his credit has been. Nah, I'm not entirely sure. Bear in mind, I do think there was an expectation based on the statement that went out that Partick Thistle would be really, really struggling financially this season. So I think we all expected that they would really struggle to attract decent players, and that so many good players would be leaving the club over the summer, and that happened. And we wondered, well, how are they going to be able to attract anybody even remotely of the same standard to replace it, the players have left? I kind of feel like they have. No, let me actually quantify that. The players that have come in to replace those that left in the summer haven't been as poor as what I expected. Like, I think there was an expectation that maybe Partick Thistle would have a budget that would be lower Championship. I don't think that's the case at all. I think they still have a decent budget, and that you would expect them to be in the upper echelons of the Championship. I still don't expect them necessarily to get promoted, and I think if they don't, then Doolan has done a respectable job, a good job actually, and I'm probably being a wee bit dismissive there. If he takes them up, then my goodness, he's done a really good job. But no, I don't think he's necessarily been disrespected for what he's done so far.
Okay, that's fair enough. I just wanted to put that out there. That's a question that just popped into my head there, just as we're discussing, because I think I saw on the BBC Sports podcast they were talking about. I saw a clip on social media. They were talking about the job that Rhys McCabe's done and where his future lies. So I just thought maybe I should turn that around and ask about where Chris Doolan's future lies. But obviously, Firhill, where it's always been. Shaughan, we'll go to the other end of the table. We'll go to the Championship playoff semi-final. This is between Montrose and Inverness Caledonian Thistle. They took on each other at Lynx Park, and it finished 0-0. I've only seen very brief highlights from this on the SPFL's lower league roundup. Lawal hit the bar for Cali Thistle. Montrose had some pretty good chances. Didn't look the best game on the planet, but you had half an eye on it while you were trying to go between this and the Airdrie Thistle match. What were your thoughts on this one?
It wasn't I agree with Stuart Petrie in terms of the fact that it was a 0-0 draw. It wasn't the worst 0-0 draw in the world. It was not exciting, but it was still intriguing, I suppose. I suppose both teams were quite frustrating. In terms of Montrose, I think from midfield to up front, no, actually, defensively, both teams are fine. I would say from midfield to up front, Montrose looked the better. The problem was, and I suppose we kind of alluded to this the last time we talked about Inverness, just defensively, like Inverness are very, very good. Like there was so many times where, like Kane Hester, for example. I mean, bear in mind that Kane Hester is Montrose's record signing of all time. I think he has 10 league goals, maybe, off the top of my head. Would they have expected more from this season? I don't know. In terms of me watching them on Tuesday, I do wonder if they are getting the most out of him, whether that's what they're asking him to do or whether that's what he is doing. But the amount of times where there was opportunities for him to a ball forward and he would run into the channel to claim it, but I don't think he's a sloth by any stretch of imagination, but he doesn't have that extra burst of pace to take him away from a defender, and so because of that, he had a defender on his tail, and then doesn't quite have a trick to take him away from the defender, I suppose. Now that's probably an unfair comparison because Inverness have a very good defence, but I suppose in terms of it, if Hester wants to play at a higher level, that's what he needs to work on in terms of, I don't know, making a difference between being top of League One and competing in the Championship. But in terms of the game overall, Montrose are the better team. Absolutely. Very, very impressed by them. If I was an Inverness fan watching that, hugely disappointed. Didn't make any impact whatsoever. I thought Law was very good. Or good would be a better description. In terms of the only player who was making any impact in terms of creatively, that was it. They'd hit the bar. In terms of a link between midfield and attack, he was about it. But I do find it strange that you have somebody like Mackay, like who we know can score goals. Kind of feels like he's the one that needs to drop deeper, and Alex Samuel is the one who plays a wee bit more further forward. And then afterwards you had Duncan Ferguson. I know I kind of spoke at last podcast about the fact that Duncan Ferguson, he's only picked up 1 point less than Callum Davidson, so I suppose I was supportive. But see, when you hear Duncan Ferguson saying, oh well, it was an artificial pitch, I don't have the players that can play well on an artificial pitch. It's difficult to do. I find that I find that a nonsense.
That's something that I found because I watched the highlights. There's about 3 minutes worth of highlights, and it did certainly, like we mentioned at the top there, Montrose seemed to have the better of the chances, whereas Cali Thistle perhaps created the game standout moment through Alloa. But I watched Duncan Ferguson's post-match interview, and he said he was delighted to come away with a point, and he said that a number of times. He said it I think he said it 3 times. And each time was sort of I was delighted. The second time was delighted to come away with a point. And then he mentioned something about the Montrose pitch. And I was thinking, I haven't heard anyone or read anything about the Links Park surface. Now, obviously, Links Park's a synthetic pitch, and obviously there's different standards of synthetic pitch, but I know there's some, like Queen of the South ground, for instance, gets a bit of a hard time of it. I've never really heard anybody say anything about Links Park, so I was surprised to hear him make the comment about the surface there.
And especially if that suggests there is a real huge amount of rebuilding work going on if Inverness were to get relegated, bearing in mind that probably be 7 or 8 4G pitches in League One next season.
Absolutely praying that Stirling Albion stay up. Absolutely praying Stirling Albion to stay up. Lose their 2 games at Fourth Bank, but God, we gave it a good go on grass. How do you see this next leg going then?
Inverness don't have a particularly good home record.
Is that right?
However, I still think back to what we said last time in terms of Inverness have got a really good defence. And ultimately, they did defend well on Tuesday night. Like Montrose looked the better side. never really looked like scoring. Like they got in good positions. Their free kicks weren't great. Their corners weren't great. There was some kind of poor decision making. See if Montrose can score first on Saturday, that gives them a chance. But I still think, again, I'll revert back to what we said the other day. Inverness defend well. If they can sneak a goal, I doubt Montrose will win this. So as much as I was surprised at how poor Inverness were, I still think Inverness will sneak us on Saturday and they'll get to the final.
Well, we'll go to Clackmannanshire to talk about the second of the Championship playoff semi-finals, and this was Alloa Athletic 2, Hamilton Accies 2. At least there's goals to talk about in this game, and some pretty good goals as well. Ewan Henderson scored for the visitors with a lovely finish before second half goals from Taylor Stephen, I was going to call him Taylor Swift there, from Taylor Stephen and Curtis Roberts put the Wasps in front. And Kevin O'Hara got the equaliser with just 15 minutes remaining. Interestingly, two former Wasps getting the goals for the Accies there. Shaughan, I think we'll watch the same highlights package. Alloa do a really, really good job with the stuff they do. As always, goes out at a nice time, good high quality production. This looked like quite a decent game of football as well.
Yeah, I thought it looked really good. Over the piece, I thought that Alloa were probably the better, but not much in it over the 90 minutes. I think the problem that I think if you were to look at this and know very little about the sides, you would say, right, so it's 2-2. Hamilton now have the second leg advantage. You would imagine Hamilton will win this. I'm not sure. There's something about them I don't particularly trust. Whether it's John Rankin, whether it's just they lose money to Nigerian princes, I don't know. There is something about them I cannot trust. And I have I think Alloa I think Alloa might have won more games at Hamilton and vice versa. So I still think that Alloa have a good chance of winning this.
I probably the same for this one, providing that nobody gets sent off and about 8 players get injured. then I do think Alloa have got a good chance. I enjoyed watching the highlights for this back. I thought this looked a good game. As you say, there's plenty to talk about. I thought that Henderson's goal was quite well taken. Sort of I would describe it as an improvised finish. You know, he's really good. Yeah, he hooks it into the net. But again, I don't think it was particularly well defended. I think there's I think it's Ethan Sutherland's at the back post.
Sutherland has been at the back post.
Yeah. But then Henderson, who's like one of the principal centre forwards, is allowed to drift into space. I'm not sure it's Mackay or Morgan Neal doesn't pick him up. And you're thinking, why is he allowed to... Somebody's switched off here. I think the ball spun into there and somebody's ball watching. And that's what's allowed him to get the chance to finish. But it's a really, really good goal. And conversely, I thought that Kevin O'Hara's goal at the end to tie the game, I thought that was really well taken. What I really enjoyed about that was, it was well taken because...
It was well taken with PJ Morrison was at fault and he should have saved it. It was a nice header, but PJ Morrison, I thought there was a far bigger header for Hamilton's second goal than it was for the first. Morrison fumbled in the net.
I don't know. I just thought he just saw it late and just wasn't able to dive in time. What I would say though, it was a good header from Kevin O'Hara because the ball sort of slung in there, and he's got to generate a lot of power, and he gets ahead of Cammy O'Donnell.
I don't think he does generate power, which is why I blamed PG. Listen, we're all different, but Morrison should have saved it.
Okay, we'll agree to disagree. Now, my favourite goal out of the lot of them was Taylor Stevens' goal, and you know what it reminded me of? Do you remember when Arsenal played Barcelona in the Champions League in 2011 and they beat them 2-1 at the Emirates, and Andre Arshavin scored a goal where it's Samir Nasri's got the ball to the right and he plays it to the edge of the penalty box, and just out of frame there's little Andre Arshavin and he just passes it into the net. Obviously, lower the stakes a little bit, but I thought this was a really good finish. Just it looked like when I saw the move progressing, I thought, I really hope Alloa score from this, because this is a really good bit of play from the middle of the park. You've got Stott Taggart coming into the box, there's overloads, there's overlapping. This was like a lot of fun. But then the ball just sort of breaks to Taylor Stephen and he just sort of like gallops onto it, just passes it. I thought it was a really, really nice finish, because it'd be easy to just blast that, to put the laces through it. But it's just so well controlled and just curls it into the corner there. Loved it.
But it's another good example of the fact that Alloa have not lucked out, but see, in terms of the loan players they brought in this season, so Taylor Stephen, and Bobby Wales, like technically they're just such good players, and I would be amazed. And I'm not saying they're necessarily going to become good enough to play in the Premier League, for example. However, I'd be amazed if they don't have decent careers in football in general. Like technically, like they have been so good this season.
I think
that finish was brilliant.
I think what I'd be keen to see, I think it's a lot of these guys where you see really young boys coming into the lower leagues. You're absolutely, I think the pair of them look too good for League One. I think since Andy Graham's in particular has come into that club, they were promising under Brian Rice, but I think Graham's taken them to a next level. I'm sure at one point as well, you could put a compilation of Taylor Stevens' goals alongside Arjen Robben's goals, and you actually couldn't tell who was who, just because it was all the same thing, all just coming in from the right onto his left foot and curling it into the net. But I hope these guys, I do hope they get a chance at their parent club, but I think even next season might be a season too far for them. I think you'd like to see them perhaps go on loan into a team, like maybe a full-time team in the Championship, develop there where you're perhaps away from that your parent club environment, somewhere different. Hopefully get the game time, the experience that then you can go back to Kilmarnock and St Johnstone, and then you might get this. Who knows? Like if they might get the chance next season. If St Johnstone are relegated, there's the possibility that might be the case. Taylor Stephen might get the chance at McDermott Park. But these guys have been really good, and it's been good watching them over the course of the season.
I suppose what makes it slightly difficult next season in terms of where do they go for Championship experience is who do we expect to be maybe at the lower end or certainly the bottom end of the Championship next season.
Do you think that's the level of club they would go to, sort of bottom level Championship
in terms of teenagers? I think so. Which in itself is an issue because probably you'll have 8 or 9 teams in the Championship that would certainly want to be challenging for top 4. So that might be an issue.
I don't know. I suppose that if you were as off the top of my head, say you were Airdrie, for instance, and you could get your hands on Taylor Stephen for next season. I don't think Airdrie have got a player quite like him on their books. If you imagine Falkirk, for instance, because Falkirk will be in the market for a striker. It's an alternative to Ross McKeever and Gary Oliver. Why not Bobby Wales?
I would be surprised if Falkirk are trying to get teenagers on loan.
They signed Michael McKenna, so obviously there's the more I think about it.
Listen, if you're trying to get promoted, I'm not entirely sure Mikey McKenna is the guy for them. But here we go. Here we are.
Cyril Dessers. Maybe they might take him and reinvigorate him for a season and give him back to Rangers. Who knows? I watched the Rangers. I don't want to turn this into a top flight podcast, but watched the Rangers Kilmarnock game on Sunday. Well, I was pulling together the notes for the podcast we recorded later that day, and just a deeply, deeply frustrating player. He's obviously got something about him, but he's just so annoying. But anyway, we're not here to talk about him. So who do you fancy then? Well, we've talking about Alloa there, Shaughan. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself. What about Hamilton Accies? Any observations here that you made from them?
I just think Hamilton are a team of like Alloa have a number of players who I am not excited about. However, they do have a number of players that are young and I think will have decent careers. Hamilton seem to have names, certainly names for League One. And I cannot get my head around if they're underperforming or if they're just not as good as I thought they were. But in terms of Tumulty and Lee Kildee and Jackson Longridge and Scott Martin, Ewan Henderson, Barjonas, Kevin O'Hara, like that feels like a team of names.
I've heard of them.
Yes, you've heard of them. We all have. And I cannot get my head around it. Now, I think if they don't get promoted, and obviously you've kind of heard comments coming out of Hamilton in terms of the kind of confidence around Rankin. If they don't get promoted, then surely Rankin will be on his way. Surely to goodness, because that feels like a team. Listen, there was a point of this season where we thought they could challenge Falkirk. That has very much not been the case. But Rankin has been tasked with getting Hamilton promoted. The budget that they have cannot last forever. That team should probably be getting promoted, but I'm not entirely sure that they will beat Alloa. Like I think it's a toss of a coin. Would not be surprised either way. if I'm being honest, I'd probably prefer Alloa to win.
Yeah, I think so. You're right in terms of what you say, because there's times where Hamilton have been really good, where it all comes together and they've been really good. Like, for instance, they beat Kelty Hearts a couple of weeks ago. They absolutely slaughtered them. I think it was 5-0, but I think that's...
But who cares?
Yeah, but that's...
But it's like nobody... Like, it's a very unimportant game, if that makes sense.
But then you see Hamilton at their most brittle, like, for instance, when they lost 3-2 at home to Annan. If you remember that, where Josh Walker scored in the last minute to give Annan the win. That's when you see them at their worst.
And they've lost at home to Alloa.
Yeah, well, there you go. There's a degree of precedent there as well. So, there's something I just would fancy, and this is, I'm not sure what I'm basing this on, but I could imagine like a lot of these players, they're like good players, but Hamilton just feel like they're less than the sum of their parts. I think, for instance, see if you're taking like Scott Martin, for instance, and put him in Falkirk's team, I think he would look like an absolute superstar.
I think so.
And he would give Falkirk... Falkirk missing somebody? No, because Brad Spencer can do the box-to-box stuff. But you imagine he would be a good option to have in the middle of the park and would really complement what they've got in there. Like, Regan Tumblty's a decent fullback. Like, Ewan Henderson and Kevin O'Hara, they're limited in what they do, but they're really, really hard-working, really enthusiastic players, and I think you can get a lot from them. But I just
look at Dylan Tate. Look at Dylan Tate.
Dylan Tate's the perfect example.
No good enough. Bad attitude, blah, blah, blah. Goes to Falkirk. A world beater.
Scooshes it, and Falkirk, and there you go. Falkirk could be really, really keen to. Is he out of? He might be out of contract at Hibernian. Can't imagine that, given his various loan spells, he's got much of a future at Easter Road. But I think he's the sort of player that Falkirk would really want to keep a hold of for next season. But it didn't necessarily work out for him at Hamilton. So it's an imperfect theory, and I hate coming onto these podcasts and just talking about vibes-based things, because ultimately that doesn't mean anything. You need to be able to back stuff up. But there's just something about Hamilton that I can't quite put my finger on. But on Saturday, Shaughan, that's the game I'm going to go to. I'm going to go to Hamilton versus Alloa. I think it'd be nice to... we're going to come on and talk about the Dumbarton Stirling Albion game. It would be quite nice to go and see that. Having been to the first leg, it'd be quite nice to see the second part. But I want to watch the Rangers and Celtic game, and Hamilton's a lot closer to my house. So I'm going to go there.
That's fine.
I'm going to go there instead and watch that. But I think that's got potential to be a real cracking tie. And you know something, what I'm hoping for is that something as entertaining as this time last year when they met each other at New Douglas Park, because that was just a big daft game. Sendings off, injuries, like I say, Andy Graham playing with two teenager attackers, madcap stuff. So Shaughan, we might as well, we've spoken about it, we will drop into the League One playoff semi-finals, and we'll start by talking about Dumbarton 2, Stirling Albion 1. As James Hilton opened the scoring for the Suns with a header after 12 minutes. Dale Hilson equalised a quarter of an hour later, and although the match appeared to be heading towards stalemate, Tony Wallace converted a late penalty to give Dumbarton an advantage going into Saturday's game. I was there at the Rock, Shaughan. Like always, when we kind of get to this stage of the podcast, you're more than welcome to turn the microphone towards me, and I will answer some questions about it.
So I would love to have watched this, but it appears to be the We Don't Do Highlights derby. How did it go?
This was, it wasn't the worst game of football I've been to this season, but it wasn't necessarily the best. I thought that for about the first 5 minutes was where the teams were feeling each other out. But when it got to about, I'd say the 5 minute mark, sorry, after they'd felt each other out, Dumbarton for the first 25 minutes were really good. Really, really impressed by them. I think down the right-hand side, you had Carlo Pignatello was playing at right back and Calvin Orsi was playing up in front of them. And the pair of them were linking really, really well together. I know they're cousins, I'm sure Fraser Clark said. And watching them together, it's like, are these guys playing well together because they're cousins or just because they're comfortable footballers that understand how each other work? So I'm not 100% sure what it is, but they were linking well. And Pignatello is such a good footballer. He knows that when to come inside to give Orsi the option. He knows when to go around the outside. And I think that Cammy Clark, who was playing at left back, had a pretty tricky match. And Josh McPake, who was playing in front of him on the left mid, really, really good player, who actually was probably Stirling Albion's best player in the night, but he wasn't coming back often enough to give him a hand. So it was quite easy to isolate Clark. and that's where the goal came from, where it was Pignatello fed the ball to Orsi, and it was a ball chucked in for James Hilton to score. Good header, but he's sort of standing about 6 yards out from goal alongside like Ross McGeechy. And if I was going to pick who's going to win a header between Ross McGeechy and Jinky Hilton, I'd always go for Ross McGeechy, but he seems to be able to keep McGeechy at arm's length and just power a header into the net. And at that point in, you're thinking Dumbarton if they get another goal, they're going to absolutely run away with this. But Dale Hilson scored. It seemed to come out of nowhere. There was the fans were really unhappy with a perceived handball with Cammy Clark. When the ball came, it was a ball switched over to him from McGeechy at right back. He seemed to control the thing using his hand and sort of like bringing it to help it onto his knee.
Yeah.
The fans were livid, definitely wanted a booking, but then he fed Hilson down the line, stood up Mark Durnan very well, and was able to jink the space in and finish at the near post. Could Jay Hogarth maybe done a bit better? Perhaps. He seemed to be caught a wee bit wrong-footed there. But then after that, pretty much up until Dumbarton got the penalty, very even game of football. Not a lot of quality in show. I think particularly on Stirling Albion's side, there was a degree of nervousness. But then young James Graham, who they brought on, I think he sprinted into the box, forced Paul McLean into a tackle that he didn't really want to make, fouled him, and Tony Wallace steps up and hits the penalty to put them ahead. So Dumbarton were the better team, but only marginally. I thought it was quite an even game here, but good fun all the same.
I seen like Darren Young was suggesting that it wasn't a penalty, which may or may not be the case. I don't know. I do think that in terms of so watched them at the weekend against Annan and reading their comments, like they have Josh McPake, who probably feels like a player who talent wise could play at a higher level, but always feels like they struggle to bring him into the game for one reason or another. I don't know if that's Stirling Albion's fault. I don't know if that's Josh McPake's fault, but how did he play on Tuesday?
I thought he was Stirling Albion's best player, but what you've described there is pretty much bang on. I think if you've got a player as good as that, you'd want to get the ball to him as often as you possibly could. But a lot of the time it was, I think they were looking to get balls over the top for Hilson or for Carrick to run onto, and it didn't really work. I think that if you're going to try and get the better of Mark Durnan and get the better of Sean Crichton, they're good meat and potato. They're two of the best meat and potato defenders in the division. If you're going to chuck balls at them, you've got to be a bit smarter about it. And I don't think that Stirling Albion were smart enough with it. And on top of that, I'll come on and touch more on McPake just shortly, but Stirling Albion just looked really jaded. It was only like 12 months ago where they absolutely ripped up the League Two, where they were neck and neck with Dumbarton for about 2/3 of the season and ultimately pulled away. And any time that I saw Stirling Albion, they played with a real bit of verve and a bit of swagger. And it's funny what a poor season can do to you, because it's more or less the same group of players, a couple of two additions that came in.
But that in itself is a problem.
Well, yeah, that is, and that's something that maybe Stennismuir have got to watch out for next season for keeping too many players going up a level. But they just looked a bit jaded. Dale Carrick was comfortably the best striker in League Two last season. Fast forward the year, and he just couldn't really get in the game. Durnan was able to keep him at arm's length. Crichton was able to keep him at arm's length. The only time that Hilson really got in behind was for the goal. Didn't really do much either side. But Josh McPake, just you could tell he's got the talent. When the ball came to him, you could see that the defenders, not nervous, because I wouldn't say that Pignatello's a nervous player, but you could see when they just coming to him, I'm going to have to we switch on a wee bit here, and that's when you're seeing Orsi coming in to cover him. So Dumbarton did well to contain him for the best part of the evening, I felt.
Because I thought it was interesting in terms of Dan Young afterwards said, he goes, at the end of the day, we're really good last season and really good at the start of this season. It's like, but that's, you essentially have the same squad of players.
Yeah.
So ultimately, it kind of feels like they've run out of puff. Like everything we said about Stirling Albion at the start of the season, in terms of a good League Two team, haven't really added to it. So it felt like a good League Two team in League One. And that's ultimately where they are. So wouldn't it be surprised if, whether it's Dumbarton or whether it's Spartans or whoever, kind of send them back down, because yes, they probably are like a good League Two team, but they now have the experience of just losing week on week on week. So ultimately, they're terrible momentum, terrible morale. So I would be surprised actually if they turn this around in the second leg.
Yeah, I watched Darren Young's post-match interview as well, and it felt he was asked one question. It felt like he gave 10 different answers to the same questions. Like
Which contradict each other.
Yeah, it was like, have you ever done that? You've interviewed someone, you've got a list of questions, you just answer them all in one go. That's kind of what Darren Young's interview felt like there. But yeah, you're right. They do look jaded. I think it's been a hard season for them, and I think that having started the season so well and qualifying out of the League Cup group stage, that's a phenomenal achievement for them. They've really hit the skid since then, and I think that it must be quite demoralising if you remember, like just how far adrift the Annan Athletic were, and were just chipped away. I mean, their form over the second half of the season has been absolutely exemplary, and Peter Murphy is very strongly linked now with the Queen of the South job, which is great to see because it doesn't happen very often where you see managers doing well at part time and getting the chance to go into full time. So that's great to see. But there just seems to be a lot of stuff that's gone against Stirling Albion recently, at least the fact that you're probably, they're not going to get like I think they'll probably draw at Fourth Bank next. I think they'll probably draw in that game. I mean, Dumbarton have got their problems under Stevie Farrell. Everyone knows that they're serial bottlers, as it were, on his watch. But the crowd were right up for it. I thought the crowd were really behind them. And that's not necessarily been the case. I mean, if you go back 12 months when they played against Annan in the playoffs, the crowd were really behind them. I thought they were quite hot for them. And there just seems to be there does seem to be a bit of positivity about Dumbarton that might not have been there like previously. And I do think that momentum can take them up. On top of that, just another couple of observations there. The pitch at Dumbarton. Dreadful. Just watching players trying to play like a 10-yard pass and the ball coming to Calvin Orsi. And Calvin Orsi, if you're going to pick anybody in that Dumbarton team that you want to get on the ball and run with it, Calvin Orsi is your man. Sometimes overcomplicated it. Sometimes the space would open up for him to get the cross in and he would try to be a wee bit too fancy. But he's the guy that you want to get on the ball. And there's times where it's coming to him and it's just bouncing up and he's got to adjust his body and it slows him down and it allows the fullback to come over and cover him. I do think though Fourth Bank have got a pretty good surface, don't they? It's still in Albion. In fact, you would have been there to see it at the weekend.
Absolutely, it does. But I do think that I don't think it's going to be a leveller. I think Dumbarton will be able to play good football on it as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. On top of that as well, that because Dumbarton are coming into this second leg with a degree of confidence, I mean, as long as they don't lose, they'll get through to the final. The way that Fourth Bank's constructed, where you've got one stand for the home fans, and depending on the opposition, they'll open up their away stand. You can imagine both sets of supporters almost cancelling each other out because Dumbarton, when they're doing well, will bring along big numbers. So I don't think there'll be as much of an advantage. What they do need, though, what Stirling should do, is get the services of that 40-year-old and his weird sons and go and let off fireworks outside the Dumbarton FC hotel beforehand. I don't know, something like that to try and level the playing field.
I could see Stevie Farrell playing like a kind of 6-3-1. And they're becoming a disaster.
That was interesting because I got talking to a Dumbarton fan at half time, and we were talking about the season so far and what he felt like Dumbarton's prospects were. And he said the big thing that he didn't like about Stevie Farrell was the negativity, not towards him, but how cautious he is when approaching. Because Michael Ruth's a really, really good player. Michael Ruth's a great striker, and when you don't actually appreciate how good he is and how much work he does for the team. I'd compare him to actually Shea Adams. How good he is for Scotland and because how clever he is at making his runs and how good his touch is. It just makes all the players behind him better. Michael Ruth's quite similar to that. But you do think he might be better served if there was another forward to play up front alongside him. And the fans said that Ryan Wallace and Ruth had quite a good partnership. But Ryan Wallace doesn't want to play football anymore, so there's one of the issues there. But that's something they want to see him be more cautious. I don't think he needs to be more cautious in the second leg. I think that if he goes there and just reprises what they did there, Pignatello, Orsi down one side, although Orsi had to come off with I think he had a bit of cramp. He got a bit of a sore one. He got a bit of a kick, so I'm not sure how fit he'll be for the next leg. Get them doubling up on Cammy Clark, because Josh McPake isn't as keen coming back the way. And in the middle of the park is guys like Kyle Banner and Callum Crane. They're enthusiastic enough. There isn't that much spark from them. And I do feel that if Dumbarton can grind them down through the hard-working guys like Finlay Gray and Kieran Newbury, they've got options on the bench, guys that can come on and add a little bit of dazzle to them further forward.
I did enjoy as well the suggestion on Pine Bravo, which we don't know for a fact, that a lot of the Stirling Albion team were at a surprise birthday party on the Saturday and were absolutely burst. But we don't know that for a fact.
We don't know that for a fact.
That was just a suggestion.
It's maybe they went to the surprise birthday, but they went home straight afterwards. Maybe they all said, we've got a big game on.
They went there respectfully.
Night. They went there respectfully, yes. One of the final observations, Shaughan, from this match, I couldn't get a phone signal in the Rock. And a lot of the time, I was there myself, and a lot of the time you're there, you're, given it's the playoffs, you want to check the other scores and find out what's going on and read Twitter and get text messages in from your mates. But I couldn't do that. So all I could do was quite literally focus on the game in front of me. And it's class.
Yeah.
It was
There's
really,
something
really,
to be said about that.
Really, really good, because there's all too often I'm distracted and I miss stuff or whatever, and I'm not giving it my full attention. You can't really appreciate the ebb and flow of games. I think there's too many times this season where all I've been focusing on is my own team rather than paying attention to the opposition. But this was quite nice to be able to go there and just see how the game was played. I mean, I'm not like a tactician or anything like that. I don't understand how and why things work, but it was just good to be able to sit there and just soak it all in.
Well, listen, maybe we all need to attend games both respectfully and putting our phones away.
It might, something, I might do that. Like if I go to Hamilton, Alloa on Saturday, I might just leave my phone in the car. No, I don't want to do that, because that's basically saying come and burgle me. That's come and steal my car. There's valuable possessions in there. I don't want to do that. I just take it with you to be on the safe side. Yeah, but stick it on airplane.
And don't use it.
Stick it on airplane mode. Turn off the signal. That's the easiest thing to do. Easiest thing to do. Shaughan, we will finish by talking about the Spartans 2, Peterhead 1 on last week's show. We said that this is going to be a close match, and we were 100% correct. Conor O'Keefe opened the scoring for the Blue Toon with a actually very well taken goal here. Mm-hmm. Paul Watson got one back shortly afterwards, and this match also looked like it was heading towards a draw, but Blair Henderson got kicked by the looks of things, went down and then got back up to convert the penalty. So advantage Spartans going up to Balmoor on Saturday. Thoughts on this one?
Slightly annoyed is my thoughts on this one, but only because of how the highlights played out. So in terms of the first half, I thought Spartans probably were kind of the brighter of the two teams. But in terms of the second half, I thought Peterhead looked the better, probably created the better chances. I thought that Blair Carswell and the Spartans goal was the kind of busier of the two goalkeepers. However, as it was 1-1, and then that very, very late penalty that Blair Henderson converted, it was difficult to see if it was a penalty. There was an alternative angle that went up on Pine Bovril before I saw the kind of angle for the highlights. From the alternative angle, I didn't think it looked a penalty. From the highlights angle, I thought it might have been. But what kind of excites me, I suppose, and see if I'm not going to go to Peterhead for the second leg, but see if the second leg was somewhere in the central belt, I think I would have went to it, because there was a big ruckus. So there was a ruckus in the very last minute. Yes. So it looked like it might have been a penalty for Peterhead. I thought it would be a soft penalty for Peterhead as well.
Was that McAllister sort of went down in the box?
Yes, yeah. That might have been soft. But then, it's like the camera angle stays there, and it feels like there's a ruckus happening off camera.
Yes.
So it feels like something is bubbling under for the second leg, and I think it could be class.
I noticed that as well right at the very end of the game,
Yep.
because the camera frame basically stays on the pitch. A number of Peterhead players went up to the referee, and I think they were right in his face, and it just seems to shuffle away from frame, and you're screaming, just what you said last week, just move the camera slightly so we can see what's going on. Move it slightly so we can see what's going on there. So yeah, it did seem to be a bit of a needle. But I mean, Henderson's penalty, I've seen. That angle's not conclusive, the one in the match highlights, but the same as yourself, Shaughan, I did see a video clip from social media that was posted on the match thread on Pie and Bovril, and Henderson didn't need much to go down. I thought, I'm not sure if it's one of those ones where you put your head quite low, where somebody can reasonably expect you to want to put their foot. And I'm not sure. I don't know the rules, so I'm not sure if it was a penalty.
I thought
or
it
not.
looked like a collapse. Like it looked like a collapse from him. But as I said, from the first angle I saw, it was like that you've felt something behind you and you've crumpled.
Mm-hmm.
But then, to be fair, when I watched it from the second angle, I thought it looked more like a penalty. And even if it wasn't a penalty, from that second perspective, I can understand how the referee gave it.
Mm-hmm.
I would. As I said, in terms of the one in the very, very last minute that Peterhead were claiming for, again, no sure, but only watched it once. But I suppose they were already irate at what had just went before that. But I am very much looking forward to the second leg.
Yeah. I agree with your points as well about the Spartans perhaps looking the better side. I think that McNulty in this game looked quite well. Obviously, I don't think he's necessarily had the impact that people might have immediately expected from him to have at the Spartans. He's doing what I thought he'd do, where he'd look quite good, but not necessarily pull up any trees. But he looked quite good as well. And I think that in this match, he complimented Henderson because he's prepared to do a lot of the lateral running, pull out wide, work the channels and so on, and just allow Henderson to get in there and occupy defenders. But they, again, going by the highlights, it seemed they were able to mix up their play. They were quite happy to have the ball go down the wing and put in some good balls. And I think on another day, Peterhead defended very well, throwing their bodies in front of the ball, and they were able to go centrally. And I think that there's a good group of players at Spartans, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them go up. I know that they've got an interesting story in terms of all the SPFL new boys and so on, but I think that seeing the guys that they've signed, on the whole, that's a good group of players that have got know-how and what it takes to win. And I think that experience could be vital to see them past Peterhead here.
Yeah, to see in terms of how we discussed Spartans at the start of the season, like, right, so exactly what can they bring to the SPFL? I mean, I think we both thought that they wouldn't struggle to stay in the division, but maybe you're looking at between, I don't know, 4th to 7th, for example. But it now feels like they have very much signed a number of players, and again, a number of names.
Yeah.
Now, whether those names are still up to it, even at this level, I'm not entirely sure. But so Blair Henderson, top goal scorer, I think, off the top of my head. Cameron Russell's had a good season. They've got Matt McNulty. They've got James Cragen. They have
Callum Booth, Paul Watson.
They've got Paul Watson. And now it actually feels like they have a squad of decent names that not too many teams in League Two can have about them. So
yeah,
I now wonder if there's a bit of, as much as I thought they're running out of puff, I thought they were. And again, I'm not entirely sure that there was elements of this game where they impressed. But again, if it had finished all square, I wouldn't have been surprised. But there is a decent team there, and now they have the lead. I wouldn't be surprised if they make the final. Yeah,
I mean, it's a total cliche, but Balmoor is a tough place to go. And you can see that as well. Some of the Peterhead's play in this game was really good as well. I mean, it's a really, can maybe question, no, actually, I don't think you can question Blair Carswell for this one, but it's a really good ball from Hamish Ritchie in over the top, and it's just weighted perfectly. This is actually probably the pass of the entire round of fixtures here. But as the ball's played and it goes in between the full back and the centre back, and it bounces in a way where it's not going forward, it just bounces, it kills it. So Blair Carswell sort of comes out to try and get it. And it's in that way where I was thinking, well, I had to watch it back loads of times, I was thinking, could Carswell have done better there? But no, I actually think it's such a good ball that doesn't go forward. It's a great finish by Conor O'Keefe. To get it over, because you need to please watch this goal back so you can understand what I'm talking about. But with Carswell coming over to narrow the angle, all he can do is kick it over him. But you can either just kick it straight up in the air and it goes over the bar. You put too much on it. But O'Keefe's finish in such a short space of time is just a really dainty little parabola where it's just up over the goalkeeper and into the net. Really, a bit where Carswell sort of stands. Like, I'm not sure who he's looking at, just like a bit of disbelief. Like, could we have done, could I have done better? Could we have done better? I don't know. It was really good. And Hamish Ritchie's just a player that I really like. O'Keefe, anytime I've seen him, looked really good. So Peterhead do have the players that can cause a nuisance. So it's really, really finely poised, this match. They're all, like, that's the thing.
They're absolutely all.
They're all really finely poised. And I honestly wish that I could take them all in, but alas. Are you going to a game, Shaughan, this Saturday?
I'm not actually. No, I'm not actually. I'm not going to a game this Saturday. I have a day out in Kirkcaldy with my pals. We'll watch Celtic Rangers.
That's all right, man. That's right. Because sometimes there's a lot of football, and sometimes it's okay just to have a wee break from it. But given the fact that I don't do much of myself, I'm glad for the football. I'll be at Hamilton. I'll watch the Rangers game, then I'll go to Hamilton. But
we will discuss all of the second legs on Monday and do a podcast on it.
Yes, Shaughan and I are going to be hanging out again on Monday. We'll be talking about the return legs, and we'll also get the chance to talk about the first leg of the League 2 playoff final between East Kilbride and Stranraer. I think that's going to be an absolutely smashing match. And I suppose might as well clear up. We got a bit of heat on social media on the weekend there for a perceived disrespect towards the club. First of all, I want to make an apology to Jordan Reddy, the young guy who does the social media for East Kilbride. I was out of turn for mentioning him. There was no need, there was no need for me to have done that. And it's only listening back to it that I was like, you didn't need to do that, man. Fun. Take the piss out of your Jim Spence's and your Andy Muirheads, but he didn't deserve it. He's a guy who's got a lot of drive and creativity, and is just starting out in marketing and social media and branding and so on. So that was out of order for me. So I want to apologise for that. But I think that it's a bit of a storm. The rest of the stuff as well is a bit of a storm in a teacup about the perceived disrespect there. Yeah, it was a throwaway comment, and yes, I can understand if you're proud of something and somebody makes fun of it, you're not going to be happy about it. And we didn't mention the fact that the club have got plans to build a new stadium. That was an oversight on our part as well there. But it was it's just opinion. We said on that show as well, Shaughan. It's just football. That's it. Don't take it so seriously.
I do feel that we were reasonably positive about East Kilbride in general. And in terms of what we said about the stadium, it wasn't, I suppose, a disrespect about what goes on at K Park. Like I know that K Park is a well-used, popular, well-run community facility,
and that's
in
as
East
well.
Kilbride.
I think that's important to say that smaller clubs, that's what you should be doing. Mm-hmm. That's what you should be doing. You should be like a hub for the community. So yes, it's good that K Park is that it performs that function for the community.
Yeah, absolutely. But it doesn't look as good as Stair Park.
No. So just want to clear it up there. No disrespect meant to anyone. And like I say, we're just here to just share our opinions. And it's like I say, just have a laugh. Just have a laugh about football. So I wanted to get that in there. I'm going to try and go next Saturday to Stranraer, East Kilbride. I mean, I would have gone this Saturday, but I do appreciate that the tickets are very difficult to come across. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go. I'll try and go down to Stair Park next week, but I'll sort that. I'll try and go out to the game on Tuesday night as well. Hopefully not. Maybe Dumbarton again, depending on how they do.
Tuesday I will be at somebody versus Wraith Rovers.
Of course. This is class, man. Playoffs are brilliant.
So exciting.
Something? I really got the buzz for it. Like, I mean, obviously there's a degree of relief that my team aren't involved, and I can just look forward to next season and with no degree of stress. But being at the Rock and just when the players are getting clapped on it in the second half, it did feel like a wee degree of electricity in there, and that is. And even although you've not have a horse in the race, it's quite nice to feel and experience and just being amongst it.
Yeah, I've been to playoff games in the past where I don't have a horse in the race, and I've just like there's something so kind of vibrant and important about them, and you know they're ultimately it decides who's going up and going down. It's so good.
Yeah, aye, definitely. That tension good. And on top of that as well, if I'm at Hamilton and they lose, oh my God, I can't wait to see a group of fans turn around and sing "Sack the Board." I can say I was there for it, and I can't wait. But please, before we go, one final message. I just want to say, please subscribe to the Terrace Patreon. There is hundreds and hundreds of hours of stuff that's going up there. If you want to play, Shaughan, have you listened to the podcast between Craig Fowler and Lee Smith talking about Forfar Athletic?
Not yet.
Right. Challenge for you. Take a shot every time you hear somebody say "kinda." Right? Take a shot every time you hear someone say "kinda." You won't last 3 minutes. Say that there, man. But on the whole, it's a good podcast, and like I say, there's tons of good stuff in there. So please, if you're watching the Rangers Celtic game on Saturday, if you're watching the Thistle Airdrie game, if you're watching any other playoff games, enjoy your football. But unlike Michelle Bass and Emma Greenwood on Big Brother 5's Fight Night, please do so respectfully. We'll see you on Monday. Take care. Goodbye.